Catflap Chats, episode 80. This will be 82, actually, not 81. Episode 82. Delighted to have Mr. Greg Bateman here. I'm going to try and do a little bit of justice, but I'm probably going to get it wrong. So please
correct you if it's wrong.
Yeah. Love that. I don't take it personally. Harlequins Academy, London Welsh, Exeter, Leicester, the People's Captain, Dragons now, and doing a fine job down there. Have I missed anyone else?
No, I don't think so.
First man in Leicester's history, which I didn't know this, first man in Leicester's history to play all three positions in the front row in one season.
Yes, there was a time where I referred to myself as the Swiss Army knife to Cockers. And he said to me, well, if you don't want to fucking do it, I'll get someone else who can. So I don't know if it was too much down to choice. No, it was a bit fortuitous, really. But look, I think it's been good to sort of be able to add that value. I do think sometimes I may have suffered for versatility, but when you're young, you're desperate to just play, aren't you? And if two guys were away on international, someone else got injured, and it was like, oh, you're big and round. Can you do that? I was, yeah, all right. And it's gone all right. So yeah, look, it's a nice honour to be bestowed upon.
You're a quite dynamic player, though. Like, I suppose we're in a different age where the gym is probably more prevalent than ever in professional rugby. But back in the day, you wouldn't have got a hooker smashing through gaps and making 40, 50-yard breaks like you have in the past.
60, 70-yard breaks. But,
sorry.
I just think, I've always enjoyed ball carrying, and I've wanted to get involved in the game in that capacity. There are props that think it's a good game if they haven't touched the ball in a game, and one of them's still going now. I know that, but it's just something I've always enjoyed doing. So I don't know if it's anything too special.
Well, fuck rugby off for a bit, mate.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that later.
I've been doing that for a season now. It's off season.
I try not to be a nose. What's life been like for the last, I suppose, 18 months now, coming down to the Dragons, obviously everything that happened at Leicester with COVID and everything, and then the last year, and then People's Captain, what's the world look like from your eyes at the moment?
Other than this little fly that seems to have found its way down here.
And a cool pool table, mate. I like that.
Thanks a lot. It's just part of my Zen space. Mate, really positive, actually. That's not just me trying to be really cliche, but everything does happen for a reason, and the way things kicked off at Leicester was tragic, because I've had 5 great years there. I've got mates there still for life, and I care very deeply for the place. And the supporters were so kind to me in my struggles. So it was hard to leave that way, And I think just the way that everything went down, and obviously don't want to get into too much detail on that front.
No,
but it's just that. Well, that it just didn't work for me, what was happening. And I was more than prepared to be unemployed because I just wasn't happy with what was going ahead. It just so happened that Dragons were looking for someone, and I wanted to move closer to where my kids live in Devon. And the used to was once some hope of Wales. And it was it all came together, and I had a chat with Dean. On Zoom, obviously, because no one meets in public anymore. And I was just blown away with what he's trying to do. And I've really enjoyed it. Now, look, I've obviously spent a load of time on the physio bed this year, but that's really because I had no pre-season, I had no off-season, I had a bit of a niggle that I couldn't really get on top of, and then I just was trying to desperately get back fit and was just trying a bit too hard, I think. But as a club that's really trying to do something and be part of something that you're excited by, so that's the rugby bit. But then also, I've launched People's Captain, which I obviously care very deeply about, and I'm just doing some cool stuff. So there's obviously been challenges, and this year's been really, or 18 months or however long it's been, has been really difficult for everyone, but in really different ways. For us, though, as hard as people might say it is, I still see 40, 50 people a day. We have our tests and all the rest of it, and of course it's not nice not playing in front of fans, but there's people that have been working at home for 2 years now. Like, how many people have you had face-to-face interactions with? It's not good for you, is it?
No, I moved. I guess such a saying off part. I moved jobs sort of 6 weeks ago. For the previous 18 months or 12 months, whatever, I've gone from hospitality at the Dragons, Blues, Wales games, football, boxing, cricket, Safari Gardens, whatever, every week, to the same we moved house because our house was too small for 3 of us to live here, me, my missus and my daughter. We had no space, and it was like, if we don't move, I'm gone, because my head just completely went for like a short period, and now I'm back out seeing people, and went for dinner with my missus on Sunday, and it feels a bit more like what it used to. And I had this conversation today actually with someone who's quite down about, obviously, Boris might be pushing things back 4 weeks and stuff. And I just said, well, I know we can't really go abroad or anything, but then let's just all book the fucking same day off in 3 weeks' time, and we'll go to the beach, and we'll go and do this, and we'll go in, and let's just do the best we can. That's all we can do. We can moan, or we can just get on with it.
Well, and I do think we have probably learned ways to do that, haven't we? Like, we've learned ways to, like, if you're at home with a partner, you just, when you've been stuck in the same house together and you don't see anyone else, you don't actually spend quality time together. You just sort of passing by, the telly goes on early, you have dinner earlier and earlier, and you just go to bed and get up. So, like, actually locking out time that you do stuff together, or like, I've probably caught up with more people during this time because I've been worried about how they are, or want to know how they're coping and stuff. And actually, I think there's some really positive things that have come from it. It just chooses which way you look at it. Or even supporting small business, look at like supporting local and stuff like that. Some of like local cafes and bakeries and stuff have stepped up and helped local communities out, and the local communities have done the same. And I think there's a lot of things that we can hopefully take with us. My fear is that we're just desperate for everything to go back to normal, and we all just go mainstream and forget about all the things that we've got better at. Does that make sense? That sounds very deep. We're early on to be that deep, but
Hey, look, I love a philosophical conversation. I don't think enough people do this. I think too many times people go, "How are you? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, wicked. Yeah, sounds. See you later, Rabbi." And that's literally it. I mean, I like, if if I go to the gym or whatever, like, that's the conversation now, because you just see people are happy on Facebook or Instagram, which is obviously fake anyway, and you just kind of go, well, they're all right. But actually, when you stop and speak to people, this has been getting me down. Yeah, I have been fucking struggling.
Well, and I think, obviously I have my mental health stories, and I have my own opinions about things, but I think a powerful movement was the Ask Twice campaign.
Yeah.
The only caveat I would say to it is, I'll go, "Hey mate, how are you?" "Yeah, I'm all right." "But really, how are you?" Like, that doesn't help you then instigate going, "Actually, I'm fucking struggling." So I was having this chat with these two guys who used to be in, I hope I'm allowed to say this, they used to be in like special forces and interrogate terrorists and stuff.
Okay.
And we did this day with them that was like learning how to interrogate or be interrogated and get information out of people, basically.
Yeah.
And the way that you ask questions is so powerful for what type of answers you get back. So, I mean, I'm literally going off the top of my head here, so bear with, but it's like tell, explain, describe. So if you, rather than going, "How was your day at school?" to your kid, if you go, "Tell me how your day at school was," they're much more sort of inspired to provoke a response. And then you can go, "Oh, explain to me about Mr. Morris shouting at Seth." And then it's, "Oh, describe how that," and we've been chatting about this because it's something that I want to bring into people's captain is, how can we educate people to have better conversations? Because I'd like to think of myself as someone that can have a good conversation, but I definitely know that's not true, because I think I would have done exactly the same thing to you if I saw you. Like, "Oh mate, how's things going with the new job?" Yeah, they're all right." "Oh, nice one." Like, what else are you supposed to do? It's a very difficult thing. And then if you go too far, you're then like, who the fuck's this guy? He's a bit intense. Do you know what I mean? And as a population, our culture is very reserved, isn't it? So we're not sort of quite natural to be like, oh, do you know what, mate? It has been tough, because you might be thinking, oh, is he going to think I'm a bit soft here? So it's tough either way, but I think it's a skill set that we need help with. But
I completely agree. And I found that actually over the last 18 months, like chatting with people who aren't necessarily in my circle has actually given me a bit of, there's a saying that I love, and it's, you can't read the label in the jar when you're sat in the jar, because you're sat in the jar and you can't read the label from the outside, but someone else can, and it's a fresh perspective. And actually I've had conversations, and people have messaged the podcast and messaged me that I know that I would never normally open up to about things, and they would never normally open up to me, but they have. And those conversations I've found actually there's no prejudice, there's no judging or anything like that at all. But it's just nice to have a chat with someone who, like, if you do it with your mates, it's kind of like, oh, just fucking get on with it, blah blah blah. Or lots of people listen to reply. They don't listen to understand, and I feel there is a huge difference there. And it's something I was always awful at, and I try to be better at it. And actually, it's not about me; it's about you or the next person. How can we add value to them?
It's that, I think they call that active listening, don't they? There's a really good book. Matthew Syed, the table tennis guy who wrote Bounce. His book that's called Rebel Ideas, I think, that it's on that bookshelf around that corner. I'll check it. But that's all about the power of diversity for performance, and how, I mean, it's slightly similar to what you're saying, but there's one concept in it that I found fascinating. It's not diversity as in what is obviously incredibly important and what's been public very recently about race, hugely important, but actually the diversity of thought. And so loads of studies have been done on, say, if you show a movie scene of an ocean with fish in it to Americans, they will see there was this many fish, there was this was the color of the water, whatever. If you show that same scene to Japanese audiences, they'll see texture and light and whatever. So it's not, neither of them are right or wrong, but the book that's from is called The Geography of Thought. And what that, I suppose, encourages is that actually, if you brought those two things together, there's actually probably a really cool middle ground that these guys could learn from those guys, and there's something that we can all learn. And I guess that's the problem with all being in the same jar, is actually you don't even know what the fucking jar looks like, do you? Because you're all inside it.
No, and you mentioned there about the middle. I think we live in a society today where people are really scared about being in the middle. Like, everyone has to be one extreme or the other. You're left or right, you're Labour or Tory, you're fucking this or that. And actually, I like being, I've said this before, I like being somewhere near the middle. Might lean one way or the other based on the facts I've been presented with and my experiences of interpreting them. But in the middle, I can ask questions from every party to try and become more informed. And so, I don't think enough people. No, I think that, like, you're allowed to change your mind based on your experience and increase of knowledge. 100%. But people are like, you look at Twitter or whatever, like, it's just.
Well, and
you just
how
get shot down.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not particularly active on Twitter, probably a bit more now, but Instagram I'm more active. But like, how many people have been blown up for a tweet they sent however long ago? And obviously some of them are fucking stupid and sure they didn't mean what they meant. But if you just changed your mind, that's also okay. But then the fear of this whole fake reality is, as soon as you've put something out there, do you lose credibility by saying, actually, with more understanding and with more time, I think differently about this now? Like, why is that a bad thing? But we don't encourage that. We follow, this guy knows what he's talking about. But does he, or has he just chosen a narrative and he's sticking to it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's that cancel culture. It happened in the cricket the other week with that bowler, and it's happened in rugby with the Argentinian, and a few other. I mean, that was probably a bit extreme, to be honest. But still, I bet he doesn't think like that now, and I bet he deeply regrets. Even if he thinks it, I bet he deeply regrets putting it in the public eye, because he's a role model. He's a role model now.
Well, I'm fairly sure he's been pretty public about that, but I also think, regardless of whether he thinks it or not, it's still not okay to put that out there. And I totally get that, and I don't think that's really what we're talking about, because I think that is a polarized, effectively racist comment. You're not going to change your mind, I guess, or I hope you would, but I think it's more this political or whatever viewpoint, isn't it, that you stand on, that you just then decide I'm right or not. Actually, when they were doing the political thing before, I really appreciated, what's his name, Rory Sutherland, is it? He was the other Tory bloke that was pushing for the...
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I think he might be Scottish, but I loved it when they were doing the debate, and he was like, everyone was like, I'm the man to do it, I'm the man to do this and that. And he just stood there, as like, but this isn't a competition of machismo. This is going to take people that can deal correctly with the European Union, that can take into account people's opinions from the members of the public and all the rest of it. And I just thought, that's such an amazing way to put it, but you're not going to win, because unfortunately people aren't going to buy into that, because that is too airy-fairy, and politics works on personality as opposed to policy, doesn't it? Which I think is tragic.
Who can shout the loudest, and who's got the best backbone?
Oh, tragic. And
it is tragic, but
that's twice we've gone deep now. We're going to have to be careful here.
Tell me about People's Captain then, pal. Before you do, and this might this probably goes against People's Captain, but Tiny Rebel give me a couple of beers, so I'm going to crack open a Tiny Rebel.
Please do. That they are, and now I've not actually met them, but I know people that know them, and they tell me they're lovely blokes, and actually I love their beers.
Superb.
I need to go down to Rogerton. Since I've lived here, I've not had time to go, but now I've got time off, I want to. But that beer you're drinking there was one of my inspirations for one of the ones I did, Club
Tropica.
Brilliant.
I'm normally a cider man, see, and then when they messaged me to say, look, we'll give you a couple of beers for every episode, one, it was free, so I was like, fucking yeah, come in. But I love the brand, and I love how it looks.
Brilliant.
And actually, some of them I really like. Like, some of them are a bit too, sour or bitter for me. But like some of the lighter ones, like this and the Key Lime and Cali Pale Ale, I really like. So,
hey, they're great beers, and I think this is. I will tell you about People's Captain in a minute, no problem. But I think this is one of the things with craft beer and all the rest of it is that, and this will make more sense when I tell you my story, but everything in the beer world is very product focused, and most craft beers will come on this conversation with you and they'll go, Club Tropica, now that's down as a NEPA, but technically that's not had as much dry hopping as our NEPA, and our NEPA ticks more boxes, and it's all product level. But actually, who gives a fuck? You like what you like, I like what I like, and the whole thing about People's Captain is about making it count. So when you have a beer with your mate, make it count, because it saved my life, and I will come back to that in a moment. But you'll notice with all of our messaging, it's nothing to do with product and all the rest of it. Like, we've won awards for our beers, and it's great to tell people about that, but I'm not going to tell you why you should drink my beer over someone else's. All I want to do is encourage you what to do when you're having it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how it started. But basically, a few years ago, I'd hit rock bottom, I would say, like really messy personal situation. Tigers weren't having a great time. And because of my personal life, I had no extra bandwidth to be dealing with my property business that I'd gone into with my best mate. And I was proper struggling, but I wanted to deal with it by myself. Manly man, I want to get through this as much as possible. I don't really want to have to deal with it and talk about it. And I was getting worse and worse. And I was just isolating myself and just finding whatever coping strategies I could, whether that's boozing on my own, whether that was finding whatever prescription drugs I could do just to get to sleep, really, because I just wasn't sleeping. It was horrendous. And my best mate from the property business, he'd been trying to sort of catch up with me for ages, and you know what it's like when you're struggling to sort of find a way to say I don't want to talk or whatever. I was always just a bit too busy, or I had training or whatever. Although, you know, I'm not your man for extras, really, to be honest. And and eventually he sort of collared me and we got together, and I just lost it. I was just like, I've just fucking had enough. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to see my kids, because every time they go, I'm then back at square one again, and it's too painful for them. It's painful for me. And it was just such a hard situation. But that moment with Jay was the first time that I was properly, rawly honest with someone. And he's not a mental health professional. Like, he works for a hedge fund. Like, he's like as capitalist as it gets. But
Yeah.
but that moment, then I was like, right. Oh, he said, listen, let's get you some help. Let's have a look. What counsellors can we find you? Do you need some medication? Do you need that? And there was just this real pinnacle moment that actually made me think, I've got to do something about this. And that's where this whole making it count thing comes from for People's Captain, because I don't say it lightly. I honestly think that really saved my life. Now, that might not be physically. I don't know if I was ever going to get to that point, but certainly emotionally, that changed things for me. And there was obviously a long process after that, loads of counselling, medication, all super important parts to it. But that was when it happened. Then you've kind of got that layer of personal life. And then in the meantime, I'd been sponsored by a local pub, and they wanted to do a brew to sort of celebrate the People's Captain, because that was my self-proclaimed nickname when I was with them. And went to a local brewery, started doing some brewing, and I really loved the process, because I'm a bit of a process guy. Like, I think we follow each other, and like, I'm into my coffee,
my
beers. Like, I love that kind of process. I'm into golf, but I'm not good at it. And it's the curse, isn't it, of people with poor thoracic rotation? It's the curse.
Horrific, mate. Horrific.
Yeah. And we did the launch night, and Manu came down, and we were giving away far too many free beers for it to be a proper business. We were just having a great time. But I'd done this article with David Walsh from the Sunday Times about my struggles, because I was kind of like, if I felt like this and I didn't realize this was such a big issue, if I just was public about it and one person thought, oh, well, fuck me, this guy's been through it, and maybe that counts for me as well. So I'd done that article, and we were at this launch night having a great time. People were loving the beers, but most of the conversations were, thanks so much for that article. That's really helped me start a conversation with my brother, or my wife so-and-so has really been struggling, and we didn't know how to start it. So we just gave them the article and asked them what they thought. And they said, yeah, they can see some things in that as well.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got this second moment of, wow, now we're having this make it count moment as well. So I was like, oh, I really want to do something with this. And I did some more brews with Everard's, then got involved because we started selling it at Welford Road and stuff. And then obviously I got sacked and was looking at how to start this up as its own kind of fledgling thing in early 2020. COVID came and kicked us in the nuts, and that made us decide it's out and out a D2C business. But that's been great, because we get that one-on-one connection with customers. And if they've got no one else to talk to, at least they'll talk to us. Like, our Instagram direct messages are phenomenal. What people need to talk about or whatever. And again, we're not professionals and we're not at all giving advice, but we're there and we can be someone to talk to. So then the final kind of layer to People's Captain is, it is a company, it is a for-profit business, I suppose. But it was important to me that whilst we've got this really powerful message, and this is something that we are really going to take into trade, how we make the local pub a local pub again, and how people can really connect with communities. It was really important that we actually fucking frankly did something about it. And this is one of my other gripes, is that I think the raising awareness movement of mental health has been great, and a lot more work needs to be done. But my concern is the more people that are just aware, but then we don't have services for action for people to actually get some help when they need it, that worries me. So the People's Captain Foundation is our sort of charitable arm, and that's where we want to sort of plug that gap for those services that provide action. So you've got a problem, you don't know where to go, we'll plug that gap and either fund existing initiatives that are going to do it, or eventually when there's more people working for us and we've got the bandwidth, we can hopefully start some of our own. But mate, as I said right at the beginning, it is just so fun. And I think people are like, oh, has it been successful? Have you sold loads of beer? And like, how's it going? And it is going great. Like, I don't want to downplay that at all. It's been going fantastic. And the trade conversations are really positive. But the moment for me that I thought we've nailed it was about 3 weeks after launch. I had this guy send me an email. And he said, mate, I've watched your video on your website and it really struck a chord with me. So I bought me and my sort of 4 or 5 mates a box each. We've all jumped on Zoom and we're just going to check in with each other and see how we feel. And I was like, right, let's close it down. We've nailed it. And I'm like, that is what I'm trying to encapsulate. And we've got more people looking after each other. That's a good thing. Now, we'll have some of my beers at some point, I'm sure. And again, it's, so why is whether my lager is better than their lager an important thing? It's not at all. Like, you like their beer, I like their beer and my beer. Like, I really don't see why that's important. What is important is that there's a brand that's standing up for this stuff, and that's what's important to me. So I don't know if I've probably gone on a little bit too long there, but that's kind of the overarching story of People's Captain.
I'd love to pick a couple of the points up there that you mentioned.
Go.
So people who listening to this who might be in a bad situation mentally or know someone who is, I've had counselling for various things. So I've been through not the same journey, but I resonate with lots of your journey. And I know that you whistle stop that. So there's probably more to it, which is your journey, not ours, if that makes sense. But counselling, like, I feel more people should have counselling, and it's unfortunately seen as a sign of weakness, yet I think it should be seen as a sign of strength, because you are evolving and growing and dealing with trauma or whatever it might be. What was your experience of counselling, and would you did it work for you, or was that just a step to find the thing that worked for you?
Sure. I think that's actually a great question, because first opinion was, fuck this. I've got to go and sit and talk to this woman who doesn't know me. Yeah. And I found it really hard, mate, like emotionally incredibly tiring. To drag up all these feelings that I had. And I just thought I was really fucking angry, mate. Like, I don't know about you, but at school, I was taught about Pythagoras and all that stuff. No one told me about anger, grief, remorse, like feelings and emotional maturity. That's this kind of stuff I want to teach my kids. But I think it absolutely worked for me. And anybody who's been to counselling, and you'll know this, is you walk out the room and you wonder, what the fuck am I paying them for? Because they never give you the answers, but they're just skilled. Sorry, the little dog has come to join us.
That's all right. It's all good.
But they're so skilled at just reflecting that back to you and getting you to talk, that you kind of have this experience, I suppose, really, where we're never inside our own heads all the time, are we? We're just sort of, you never pay attention to your thoughts or how you feel. But then when someone asks you, and how does that make you feel? You're like, the first thing is, I don't know, really. Maybe it makes me feel like this. And you're asking them a question back, like to tell you how you feel. Like,
and that's almost like, is this the right answer I should be giving you or not? I'm not sure.
100%. So I think that was my honest experience of counselling, because I don't want to just say it was great. Because to start with, to be honest, and I don't know how you felt when you first went, I did find it quite hard. I still found it incredibly rewarding, and I think 100% it's definitely a good thing to do. But that emotional sort of getting used to talking is a difficult thing to do. Then I think your other question of should more people do it, I don't know if I'd look at it as a sign of strength or weakness, although I don't disagree. I guess the overarching message with mental health is we always wait until we're at crisis point before we do anything. And that's what I did. But if actually I was more skilled and better at talking about how I felt and better at understanding myself, had more self-awareness, had a better support network around me, knew what my triggers were, knew what my coping strategies were, I would have been in a much better place when shit hit the fan, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why wouldn't counselling be a good thing to do to help you get to understand those things along life anyway? Like I haven't seen a counsellor for probably my second to last year at Leicester, or maybe my last year at Leicester. But I will continue to see one throughout my life, I'm sure, because the way my life is, the more things that come in and busy and all the rest of it, I think it's a really important thing to do. So I think 100% more people should go. Don't know if it's a strength, weakness, or just preparedness for life thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think for me, I very, very closed I was, and I'd have been like fucking Iron Man sat in a Mark 1 suit, Mark 2 suit, she was never getting in. It was always the fucking suit, right? But then I suppose for me, what it allowed me to do was actually, she just not, I'm going to really simplify this, just kept going, why, to the point where you're just like, fuck, I don't know. And then you do, and you don't want to say it because you're like, I don't know if I've got this in me to bring this up right now. But then you do, and you kind of go through these things then, whether it's childhood, relationships, work, whatever it is, I don't know. Everyone's different, right? Drink, drugs, gambling, whatever. But what it allowed me to do is not so much with the counsellor, but it allowed me to have then these conversations with a select few people outside of that. And one day where I really needed help, and that was the day things turned around for me, was the day I finally rang two people, one in rugby and one close to me, and said, I need help. This is happening. Today's the day I've got to change it, or else I will not here tomorrow. And the one guy at work was like, close to work, close to family, close to my friends. And he was like, fucking don't worry about that. Come see me tomorrow. We'll get it sorted. And if I hadn't had those conversations previously, I would never then have opened up about that. So I don't know for me if the counselling per se helped me at the time, but it gave me the tools and the confidence and it brought the guard down, I suppose, for me to go, it's okay to actually feel like this and talk like this to someone else.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing in that regard, is like you needed to practice that skill.
Yeah.
Be able to do it. And although maybe the counsellor wasn't the first person you rang, it was people that you trusted, and you knew who those people you could trust were.
Yeah.
Like that's two massive fucking things that you wouldn't have had prior.
Yeah, completely. And also learning that it's not embarrassing to have struggles, and it's not embarrassing to need to speak to people. And actually, you know, when I did go through those things with the people, and I'm quite open about it now. So if someone, you know, today's not for it, but if someone says to me, blah, 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 yeah, I went through this, I went through that, you know, at the times when I was seeing you on a Saturday out on the piss, this is what I was going through, and I was hiding it all, and they'd be like, no fucking chance. I'd be like, mate, that was my life. Like, no one had a clue. But now I'm just like, I've said to a few people recently, like, I think you should go to counselling, maybe not for that particular hour you've sat in there, but just for everything else it's going to give you and allow you to go and develop and grow afterwards and with other people.
I totally agree. And how many, you know, Buddhists, they'll have a senior monk that they'll talk to regularly that will be like a mentor to them. When people are at uni, they have a mentor that's like above them, and that might be in an academic relationship, but there will be an emotional support to that as well. When we're at school, we have teachers or a mentor, and I just kind of feel like it's a really constructive habit to have an anchor or something that you're consistently doing. And actually, there's this company that I'm on an advisory board for, this app called Fika. And their whole premise is we spend all our time in the gym or watching what we eat but we never emotionally train ourselves, like emotional fitness. And their app is fantastic at just like that sort of stuff of like learning how to speak, learning how to meditate, learning how to do whatever. And it just, so many things are just resonating with me as you're speaking now. It's like all of these little nuances that you're talking about is stuff that, you know, like when I'm telling you my story, you kind of whistle over all this stuff, but it's like, of course, learning how to actually sit down and what am I actually feeling now? What is the thought? What is the, all that sort of cognitive behavioral stuff that you do, CBT. Like, so important. That's why it exists, isn't it? It's like the science of the brain, you know?
But again, we live in a world, and like you said, you're not massive on social media, so you probably don't get involved with it too much, I'd imagine. But like, we live in a world now where you can't show weakness on social media or anything. Like, for all the good it does, it's so fucking toxic as well. And I feel like I'm a bit older than you, so I'm probably not quite stuck in the midst of it. But even then, you know, I'll go there, you're comparing yourself to people, whether it's similar age, but they've got a better job, or you've got a better job, or the wages, or the cars, or the holidays, the women, the fucking whatever it is, right? And you're just comparing yourself all the time. And it's like, oh, nothing's ever good enough. And like, you like the process. And I've learned over the last few years to start loving the process. You know, with the podcast now, I love the process. The conversations are great, but I love the process and like how I get there and how the audience interacts with it, rather than just how many downloads did I get, how many likes did I get in that one picture or whatever. And I feel like this generation coming through now, like, we're older, whereby if someone says that, I just go, mate, I don't fucking care. Like, your opinion doesn't pay my fucking bills, mate. So I don't care if you want to slag me or troll me or whatever. But like, too many like of these youngsters coming through now do care, and they're governed by likes or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. And it's not that I'm not massive on social media, as in, well, I'm not massive on social media because I'm not that famous, but I mean, I'm not a huge activist of it. But like, I put my post up there on Instagram that was like, not the only one with a picture of me. It was like, and that was purely just like a, fuck, I've been there. Just please get some help if you need some help. And the comments, messages were just, and that's what I mean about the Leicester supporters at the time, fucking unbelievable. And I still speak to some of them now. Like, they'll message me and be like, Greg, how's everything, mate? How's Wales? And, you know, just wonderful people. And that was a moment where I thought, wow, how kind is everything? Then you play a game and some absolute numpty who's never played a game of rugby before in their life at any decent level thinks it's acceptable to tell me I was shit. Well, I know I was shit, and I didn't try and be shit, but I unfortunately was shit. So it's weird because I would say when I'm vulnerable about emotions, or have been vulnerable about emotions, I think I've actually been really well received. And to be honest, if anybody was a prick about it, that really wouldn't bother me. But even when I'm not vulnerable about emotions and people just want to have a dig, that probably gets to me more because there's absolutely no reason for it. Do you know what I mean? If I just rocked up to someone's place of work and was like, I thought you were shit today. Like,
it's mad, isn't it?
You were 5 minutes late, took your lunch too early, and you had 3 fag breaks, and you didn't get the teas in today. Jog on, mate. I'm going to put that bloke in next week on my fantasy team. All right, sorry. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've said this, like, I don't earn my salary 100% of the time, because I don't know anyone who functions at that level. You have days where, like, I say to me and my missus now, like, it's never 50-50 all the time. One day it's 60-40, one day it's 80-20. But as long as we're at 100% together, we'll get through, you know, touch wood, we'll get through anything that's going to come our way. There are times when it's like 99-1. Doesn't matter which way, whether it's me or her is the 1 or the 99, but not, you can't earn your salary 100% of the time. Players don't go out to have a shit game. You train hard all week. You go through your process. You train like an absolute pro. Train like Tarzan. Sometimes you play like Jane, and that's just the fucking way it is. Because if we knew why it happened, everyone would be chucking out 11 out of 10 performances every week.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because I think that's a really obvious thing. Like, if you actually sit down with someone and explain that to someone, I feel like that Muppet fan would understand that. I'd like to think. But yet there's still something in human culture that thinks it's acceptable to call out people on social. And actually, another book for you, John Ronson, I think, is he the guy that wrote the psychopath test?
I don't know, but I'll have a look. I've written the other one down. I'll write this
John
down as well.
Ronson did this other one on public shaming. And it's like, so you've been publicly shamed. And it was about people who had just been hammered publicly. But the reason people hammer people publicly is to try and show something of themselves for calling out that behavior, if you know what I mean. And of course, like as we mentioned earlier on, there are some things that absolutely do need to be brought to public attention. Like, there are things that the more we can get behind, the absolute better. Totally believe it. Power to the people. I'm all part of that. But the whole, like, going after players, or like Ash at our team, some of the shit that he gets sent.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Just
Do you know what I mean?
Just because he speaks out and he's black. That's literally it.
What? And those people don't think that he should have a voice.
Yeah, like, why would someone above you will never talk down to you, will they? I find that, like, if someone is doing, if someone is, doing better than me or whatever, very rarely you'll get that person going, fuck me, you're shit, you're fucking rubbish, blah, blah, blah. They either won't speak to you, which is a separate issue, or they're like, oh, keep going, pal, you'll get there one day. Like, it's only the people below you that really fucking try and go for it. And so, like, I feel the more he's spoken out about, I don't know Ash, I spoke to Dave Buttress, actually. He came on here, and Ash might be coming on at some point in the future, so I would love to speak to him.
You should. He's fascinating.
Yeah, but I feel like just the more I see, the more people don't like someone speaking up about stuff, and they feel like entitled to go, you're wrong, blah blah blah, this is the opinion. And I genuinely bet he wouldn't get as much shit as he does if he wasn't black. And that's very bold, maybe. But
oh yeah. And do you know what's interesting about this race thing is, obviously, it was all kind of sparked. Although, having said that, I was about to say it's been sparked from the George Floyd thing, but like, this has been going on for a fucking long time.
Fucking yeah.
And I was at Leicester at the time, and I was having a chat with Kyle Eastman.
He might be coming on actually in a couple of weeks.
Oh, bro, get him on. He's unreal. Get him to tell some rugby league stories. He's a hero.
Yeah, Rob Webber put me in touch with him the other week. So I think
please do. I love Kyle. I'll come back and go on with him. He's a legend. Ask him about Army Camp. Army Camp and the trout sandwich. And I sort of had this chat with him. I said, Kyle, how often do you think about being black? Because I have never once thought, my black mate Kyle, you're just Kyle. And I would honestly never, it doesn't cross my mind. Obviously, I know you're black, but like, and he said, being 100% honest with you, I think about it all the time, a lot. Like, I know if I'm going somewhere, like, I feel like I shouldn't be there, and it was just such an eye-opener for me. And it was having that conversation with him, I was like, I think I'm white privileged. I'm not trying to be, but by birthright, I am white, and I don't have to think about what color my skin is and where I go and all the rest of it. And the fact that I have no understanding of any of that, to me, is just as bad a white privilege as white privileged people that hate on black people. Do you know what I mean? And I think that sort of resonated with me a bit, because I had black mates at school. but it was just never really a thing where not. But maybe it was, but I didn't know because I never thought to ask. Do you know what I mean? And that sort of hurt, like embarrasses me a bit. But I'm like, I don't know. It's a really interesting thing to think about. How often do you think about it? Never.
I think also part of it, and this is no excuse, but I'll talk about myself here. Growing up, I've had black friends, not so much in school. Where I grew up, there wasn't really a lot of black kids in Plymouth. Don't know why, I just didn't really have many black friends in school. But in uni, I had quite a few. I went to uni in Cardiff and from Plymouth. So obviously people come from all over the country, all over the world. And a couple of my close mates are of various ethnicities, but born and bred Bristol, Birmingham, wherever, right?
Mm.
When I was in uni, I wouldn't think twice of dropping in a little comment, like not to the point where you'd outwardly call someone the N-word or even like, Pakistani, but, whatever. But like there's one guy and his family, I won't name him, right, but his family are Mauritius, Tongan descent, but actually he looked more just as a immature set of rugby lads. He was just Asian looking, shall we say. So we called him Raj. And like, you think, fuck, it's harmless. And he put up with that for fucking however many years. And when you look back now, you're just like, sorry, mate, like, we were dickheads. But we just at the time didn't know any better because it was just the way things were. And like, I wouldn't fucking dream of doing that now and saying that now, or like, I don't know, mate. Like, I had this conversation with a girl who was a former on a podcast, who was a former like paid stream model and stuff like that. And like the conversations I would have and the actions I would take when I was younger, she was talking about things. I was like, I've done that. I've 100%. I've done that when I was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Nothing to the point, nothing bad that you get arrested for, but just, the catcalling, the fucking, I don't know, when you're texting or you're putting pressure on someone to fucking go on a date with you or just whatever it might be, right? I wouldn't fucking dream of doing it now. And it's embarrassing.
But then what we're talking about now is we've changed our minds.
Yeah.
Right, as we said at the beginning, we understand more and we've changed our mind. I've just seen in my camera how sunburnt I am from being out on my kayak today.
I thought you were out on the water today. I saw it.
Yeah, when I got myself a kayak for my birthday and I thought I'll go out for a little paddle. I came back after about half an hour and I was like, oh, fuck. But going back to that point is we've changed our minds, or not necessarily changed our minds, got more understanding. And I think that's okay. And I also think that's completely understandable. And of course, you never want to hurt anybody, but you didn't know. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying, so that's still not okay and all the rest of it that we, need to make clear. But you are now at a point where you understand that is something that is a problem, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I hope so. Like, it was socially acceptable at the time, a group of 30 rugby lads, everyone had nicknames. I mean, I had fucking nicknames as well. I was a 16 stone 12, so I wasn't particularly massive, but I was the fattest of 3 Mikes who played in the team, so I was called Fat Mike. That fucking stuck with me, but it stuck with me till I was like 30, to the point where I was like, you just fuck off now, like, we're adults, like, grow up a bit.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not a small lad, I'm pushing some fucking kegs here, like, but I wouldn't dream of like stuff like that now. I think I don't know, you just mature a bit, I suppose, and you look at the world, and actually, if more people were nicer, the world would just be so much fucking better.
Yeah, it would be. And that's also like, I think what we're talking about as well is be nicer, be like considerate. That doesn't mean that we have to lose a sense of humor, but it also doesn't mean like it's then acceptable to call someone Raj if they look like they're Indian or like whatever. And it's just we've been through this shift, and again, talk about the positives of this situation is we've got an opportunity to take some of that stuff forward, and I think that's a real positive. And actually, this whole going back to the diversity thing is like just having a quota of we need more Black people, Indian people, or whatever in certain things. Of course, that's important, but that's almost more offensive if we're not giving them the opportunities to study for these things and whatever, and we're just doing it to fulfill a quota. That just smells like South African rugby issues all over again, doesn't it? It's just like, actually, how about we just create better opportunities and just see what happens, you know?
Yeah, football's the one. The minute you said that, I thought about them. There's always the thing about Black managers and Black coaches, and I'm always of the opinion, but I don't run any businesses apart from this, so I'm not the voice of fucking reason here. But surely just the best person gets the job, whether it's a female or someone of a different ethnicity than white, British, Caucasian, male, or whatever, you know? Like, just the best person. But I agree with what you're saying there. Are there enough opportunities for the average Joe? Doesn't matter what creed, color, whatever. Are they getting the opportunity to come through playing and coaching and to be recognized?
I think that's more likely where the issue probably is, isn't it? And if you look at most boards of most clubs of any sport, there's not a particularly diverse set of people on those boards. So even if you did have two quality candidates, it's more than likely going to be weighed towards whatever their jar looks like.
Yeah, very nicely put. Well done. Hey, look, I don't know if we've been chatting for, I don't know, 50 minutes. We haven't even touched on rugby yet. Before we bring the podcast to the bottom level and talk about rugby,
Go on.
What's next then for the People's Captain, and where do you want to take it, and where can people find it as well? What's going on with it?
So www.peoplescaptain.co.uk or People's Captain on all major social media channels. Where do I want to take it? So we are at the point now where we're actually just taking on our sort of first round of funding, which is going to help us take on the trade market. I mean, trade's been smacked with COVID. So our D2C model is all up and going. We've got some more specials coming, more beers, all the rest of it. But the really cool thing that we're going to, well, not that that's not really cool, but the way that we take our strategy into trade is probably the next big thing for us, because this has never been about flogging cans of beer, or on draft, it'll obviously be kegs and casks of beer. But for us, it's about working with pub groups that understand what we're trying to do and how they want to get involved. Now, we've spoken to 3 or 4 big ones that you would have heard of. And do you know what I found fascinating is how hard done by they feel by the government for how they've been treated over COVID. Now, I know we've been a little bit political, but let's go back to what the local pub used to be to the community and what that used to offer. Now, I'm just old enough to remember my local landlord in Frimley Green, and he was the accountant, the mechanic, the local recruitment agent. They were everything. They used to be able to sign for your passport, the local landlord. And what we've had with these, pub groups and all the rest of it, that you don't get that local landlord that is that person that you can connect with and look out with. So what we're talking to pub groups with at the moment is, how can we bring that back? How can we make the local landlord the community people's captain? That's what we want to do. So we want to try and provide ways and means to people to have great beers, have great experiences, and to enjoy themselves, but in a safe space. And I think they feel, a lot of these pub groups feel, that the government has portrayed them as somewhere that everybody just goes and gets pissed. But actually, the pub, for a lot of people, is where they might have their only cooked meal for the week, their only time that they spend with other people outside of who's at home, who they might not want to be spending time with at home. Let's not forget
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I just feel that the opportunity for us to help with that community vibe is massive. And I know it feels like every time you ask me what we're doing, it's a really deep answer. But the reality is we want to do something pretty awesome. So that's where we'll be going when we go on trade. Then we'll be talking in the coming months and years after that as we scale up and go to the moon.
Hey, look, I think it's fucking needed, pal. I grew up in the city, so I grew up in Plymouth. But for my sixth form years, I lived in a little village, and the pub was in the middle of the village, and it was where everyone met. Like, you just text, 5 o'clock at the team are in or whatever. We'll be down there. But you'd go in there, and you knew all 100 people in there who all lived in the village, and they like you said, they ran the post office. They ran like everything you needed was in one place,
100%.
and it was a very like family feel to it. And then moving to Cardiff and being in Plymouth before that, it wasn't like that. Like, I grew up in some places where it was look after number one, and it was tough to get by at times, And so I feel like we need that, more than ever. Like, let's just get back to seeing people and
100%.
connecting again.
I've got two locals here. Well, Monmouth has got a ridiculous amount of pubs anyway, but I've got two locals, the Nag's Head and the Punch Tavern. And every time I go in there, they remember my name, they remember the other half's name, they remember the dogs' names, know what we want to drink, ask us about what happened that week. We talk to them about what's going on with them. And it's like I go down there on my own. In fact, I might actually pop down there tonight, because I can go and have a conversation with someone, and I'm not like, I need to find someone to go to the pub with. It's like, I'll just go down and talk to Mike, or I'll talk to Tash or Vicky, or like, and that's a really powerful thing. Bear in mind, they're remembering names after we moved there a couple of weeks, and that's like a skill that you don't get from a lot of landlords. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm after. Is I want people that go, oh mate, how's it going? Like, how is that podcast going? Anything we can do? Do you want to film one down? Like, get involved with what you're trying to do. That's something to get inspired about. And actually, I think that in a roundabout way encourages more responsible drinking as well, because then it is more about that. And nobody gets written off in a pub that they know the people there. Do you know what I mean? You only get written off in Irish bars on holiday, don't you? Where Daily Mail capture it. Yeah,
you respect it more because it feels like your pub, not their pub. It's where you go to relax, catch up, have food, have a moan, fucking get with someone, break up with someone. I don't know, whatever you use the pub for over the years, but it becomes part of you, and so you don't want to disrespect that. And if everyone's been written off on a pub before, but the next day, then you're like, "Fuck, I'm so sorry." Like, I'll pay for that. But I completely understand what you're saying, pal. I completely get it.
Oh, good.
I hope that it takes off, but I hope you get the buy-in from people as well. I feel like there should be more of you doing that in the world, and it would be a much better place that we live in.
Well,
especially in today's society.
Thank you. And I think, what's interesting is my dog's barking at something. I think what's interesting is the buy-in is almost secondary, because I think that comes from doing good work anyway. And it kind of goes back to the social media thing. Like, I don't really look at how many likes or whatever we get on posts. Like, people message or people are inspired to do something. That's more important to me than thanks. You know what I mean? It's actually, you make an impact, and these things look after themselves. So, and we've also learned loads, like an offering and how we can do things differently and stuff. And we'll continue to fuck things up. Of course we will. Yeah. I've never done this before. We're doing the best we can. We've got really experienced people that work with me, but that's okay. Don't mind that at all. Because I'm doing it mistakes with a bit of integrity and just trying to do the best thing I can, because what I will never, or hope I never get wrong, is what we stand for, our values, our purpose. The way we execute that is based on the times, who would have thought we'd have been doing Zoom beer tastings with the press, or we'd have been doing Zoom beer tastings with our beer club members or whatever. Like, that's the world we live in now, isn't it? So you just move with the times.
You just adapt. But if you keep that integrity, you can't. I don't think you'll go far wrong. You're obviously a very intelligent bloke.
Well, I can pretend to be. Thank you.
Well, you come across that way. You're very passionate. It seems like you've got a lot of integrity. So I'd like to think that is a good recipe for success, and not necessarily in the number of cans, but the impact that people's captain and yourself can make off the field.
And that's all that matters, mate. Right, do you want to do some rugby before we finish, or have we had enough?
Well, do you know what, mate, right? I'd love to get you back on, because I'd love to, and I appreciate we've been an hour now, but I'd love to get you back on at some point, probably, to the rugby side. So I'd love to like delve into, London Welsh and that year in the Prem, and Leicester and the culture, because it's not the Leicester that we all remembered, but it's still Leicester and Exeter, and obviously at the Dragons now and stuff. So I'd love to get you back on at some point, and hopefully in person, and we film it and we can have a beer, and I can tell you that yours is better than Tiny Rebels. But
yeah, I was going to say, wait, who's bringing the beer? Give mate to suppliers.
Well, look, I'll put you in touch with Tiny Rebel after this. If you, I've got your number and that, so I'll put you in touch with Mo, who's like head of brand there. He is a superb bloke. Can't do enough for people. So I think you'll get on with him. But look, it's sunny. Why don't we call this a day here, and we'll have part 2 of this at some point in a few months' time.
Perfect.
Before the season starts, and we'll have a beer and we'll have a good chat. And I'd love to just know the journey. I'm fascinated by people's journeys.
100%, mate. Let's do it.